super fun in a new Toyota. Visit Toyota.com or your local Toyota dealer. Toyota, let's go places.
Welcome to the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. Now get ready for Strange Things with Joshua P. Warren.
Welcome to our podcast. Please be aware the thoughts and opinions expressed by the host are their thoughts and opinions only and do not reflect those of iHeartMedia, iHeartRadio, Coast to Coast AM, employees of Premier Networks, or their sponsors and associates. We would like to encourage you to do your own research and discover the subject matter for yourself.
By the Wizard of Weird. This is Strange Joshua P. Warren. I am Joshua P. Warren, and each week on this show, I'll be bringing you brand new, mind-blowing content, news, exercises, and weird experiments you can do at home, and a lot more. On this edition of the Part 2 of a wild history of ghostly and spectral animals. On the last show, I started reading some portions from this book I published in 2006 called Pet Ghosts, Animal Encounters from Beyond the Grave. And I started telling you about the history of what I call phantomals. These are animals that appear to be ghosts or ghostly. And I had a feeling as I began telling you about this vast history that I might run out of time, because it's a huge story. Well, sure enough, I did. And so now I'm going to pick up where I left off last time. And of course, I'll add some commentary in there, and maybe even I'll tell you about another personal experience that I had with a phantom. But before, I went through ancient times, and I made it up to the Middle Ages and the Victorian period. So let's start back there. Of course, the most chilling of black dogs, and perhaps the most well-known, are the hellhounds or devil dogs. These massive black canines with searing eyes of fire have been considered members of Satan's hunting pack. They are always associated with negative events. In many cases, it's not even important to actually view the beast. Simply hearing their blood-curdling howls break at midnight's stillness is enough to appreciate their impact. According to legend, such beasts not only guard the devil's most sacred secrets, but aggress toward any party Lucifer targets for spiritual attack. In some cases, the packs are even headless, and the most outstanding have frequently been sighted near Cornwall, England. Though the earliest report of a black dog probably came from France in AD 856, a creature that briefly appeared during an evening church service, eyes glowing when the room's torches suddenly extinguished. The most outstanding early experiences were in England, August of 1577. Strangely enough, these encounters also occurred during church services. The creature in France harmlessly appeared and disappeared, and we have no clear understanding of its implications, but the animal that interrupted a stormy Sunday morning service in Bungay, England, was certainly a hellhound. Without explanation, the beast, physically described as a typical giant raven dog with blazing eyes, appeared in an aisle of St. Mary's Church and violently sprung on a member of the congregation. By the time the hysterical patrons realized what was happening, at least 3 members of the church were dead, some with throats and limbs torn away, some crushed by fallen masonry due to the leaping beast's weight, and others scorched and shriveled by the phantom's energy. The region's storm churned with, according to a pamphlet of the day, quote, darkness, rain, hail, thunder, and lightning as was never seen the like, end quote. Shortly thereafter, a black dog, perhaps the same one, interrupted another church service at Blytheburgh Church in Suffolk, only around 10 miles away. Mauling and murder continued there, and once its bloodthirsty work was done, the powerful hound galloped out a door, leaving deep black burn marks on the surrounding wood. An old verse records the Bungay event. All down the church, in midst of fire, the hellish monster flew, and passing onward to the choir, he many people slew. These kinds of stories are particularly interesting The incident at Bungay made such a realistic impact that the hellhound was incorporated into the town's coat of arms. And to this day, the supposed marks, the burn marks, can be seen at Blytheburn. The dog's purported ability to savagely kill and having a weight heavy enough to destroy parts of the Bungay building undeniably implies its solid existence in our physical realm. However, the fact it severely burned humans and the wooden doorway, plus the sheer scope and magnitude of its chaotic destruction and mysterious origin, are not consistent with any known normal animal. This curious combination of, dare we say, natural and supernatural qualities makes it extremely difficult to understand such a being. Regardless of whether or not such beasts spend most of the time in some other realm non-physical to us, when they do assume a presence in our realm, they are absolutely tangible and even augmented by physical powers misunderstood by present scientific views. They are certainly phantoms, and yet phantoms are not exclusively non-physical. On the contrary, they seem to shift between the frequencies of our physical dimension and others, fully interactive and participating in whatever realm they occupy at any given time. Now, despite the documentation of ghost dogs in Europe, such creatures have been seen around the world. South Africans have long told of the Vullerhond, which is considered an omen of doom, and is generally described as a shaggy beast, usually seen from a distance, only fully recognizable if the unfortunate observer gets within feet of the apparition. As opposed to classic black eyes that may only have, opposed to the classic black dogs that may only have glowing eyes, the Vullerhond's entire body is surrounded by devilish crimson light. Such an appearance is more typical of traditional apparitions materializing in these luminous, almost electrically enhanced forms. Though it is never surprising that dogs and cats should be recognized in spectral literature given their long histories as pets, modern humans may be surprised by how horses are prominently mentioned in that context as well. After all, the presence of a horse is a novelty for most in our era of automobiles and airplanes. But in days past, even a person with no desire or need for a dog or cat often relied on a relationship with horses for transportation. It's therefore not surprising that horse apparitions may be the most widely documented of all. Of course, we must wonder whether this is due to an increased presence of equine spirits or the simple fact that such large creatures are easier to observe. This is a question that frequently crops up in discussion of animal phantoms. Given the fleeting and the fleeing nature of so many creatures, how can we be sure that whether or not an animal briefly observed is actually a normal physical specimen or a ghost? Well, quite simply, we cannot. Horse apparitions are frequently seen with ghostly human counterparts. The best examples may be the headless horseman, tales of galloping, pitch-black steeds mounted by furious, decapitated riders have lingered for hundreds of years, especially found in some of the earliest German and Scandinavian legends, as documented in the 1700s by the folklorist named Karl Masaus. Such specters are usually the product of wars. A revered officer set on battle who suddenly loses his head exists in a state of delirious confusion. Energy of the tortured man, frustrated by his inability to complete the fight, especially with adrenaline pumping, may burn a hole between this dimension and the next. Headless horsemen are unable to tell the difference between friend and foe, and so attack anyone unfortunate enough to cross their paths. The strangest part is the very fact that they ride horses. If a soldier is beheaded, but the animal survives, why should the creature be doomed to appear as a misty slave of his master? If the horse is killed at the same time, then it makes sense. Otherwise, we must wonder if the beheaded chooses from some stable of phantasmal equines in the netherworld, or if the soldier's horse instantly transforms from a physical to non-physical beast by means of a process misunderstood by science. On the other hand, in some cases, they might simply be imprints, therefore negating the necessity for the horse death. Regardless of the origin, these creatures carrying tormented human souls are certainly impressive phantoms. And when we come back from this break, I'll give you some rather chilling stories about these kinds of phantoms, including one I bet you've never heard of that comes from the area where I grew up in Western North Carolina. You know what? If you are a person who bought one of my paracymatic sigils, I've got some good news for you. We now have in our workshop this incredible professional engraving machine. And so for the time being, Mobius is going to take your customized, personalized parasimatic sigil, and he's going to burn it onto this beautiful pendant made from this striking metamaterial, as well as a high-quality leather key fob. And don't worry, the leather only came from animals that died naturally. So, go right now to thesigillab.com. That's sigil spelled S-I-G-I-L. Go to thesigillab.com and click the link to the key fob and the pendant. Once you get it, you send your sigil, your custom sigil, to Mobius, and you will receive this beautiful set. thesigillab.com. I'm Joshua P. Warren, and you are listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be right back.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Strange Things coming right up.
With my sprinklers, until I saw Jordan Valley Water as a reminder that we're using about 12% more water than last year. Yikes. So now I just water one day less each week. Grass is fine, the neighbors didn't judge me, and I'm using water like it actually matters. Because it does. Together, we can do better. Learn more at jvwcd.org/conservation. That's jvwcd.org/conservation.
Want to save money on getting a new car? Yeah, of course you do. You need to switch and save at Volkswagen Southtown. We'll lower your payment, give you top dollar for your trade, or chop your interest rate, guaranteed. Take home the all-new 2025 Tiguan or hop into a new Atlas. Our cars are so fun to drive, you'll feel like you're on the Autobahn. Say on Vita say to high payment or high interest rate. Switch and save at Volkswagen Southtown. Shop our incredible selection at vwsouthtown.com.
Financing through Wells Fargo. See dealer for details.
Go to coasttocoastam.com for more information. Hi, this is George Noory, and you're listening to the new iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. Now let's get back to Strange Things with Joshua P. Warren.
Welcome back to Strange Things. And Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. I'm your host, the Wizard of Weird, Joshua, beaming into your wormhole brain from my studio in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada, where every day is golden and every night is silver. Agitato Zume. And if you would yourself a digital good luck charm from me, immediately go to joshuapwarren.com, sign up for my free e-newsletter. You'll see the letters right there. They're kind of slimer green on the homepage. Click here for Joshua's free newsletter. Click it, put your email address in there, boom, you will get an automated email from me. A changing surprise. Let's get back to these tales of headless horsemen and the like. Headless horsemen of the United States were popularized by Washington Irving's 1819 fictional short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and in the 1869 publication of a book called The Headless Horseman by Captain Mayne Reid. Unlike Irving's tale, Captain Reid's book is based on true accounts from Texas, personally investigated by the author. But among Native Americans, wraiths astride horses were not an uncommon sight, even if the raiders were not beheaded. Perhaps the most dramatic example comes from Chimney Rock in North Carolina. Chimney Rock is lush with Cherokee Indian legends. The most outstanding is a terrible battle that sometimes rages in the sky at sunset. The horizon turns to wispy, bluish fog, and from the seething clouds emerge two armies with hundreds of horses engaging head-on. This epic struggle was observed by whites as early as 1811. Being tiny figures on the ground, pioneers would gawk up at the church playing out in the heavens on a vast, awesome scale. And though there is no historical basis for this original event, those who witnessed the rare display are most impressed by the snorts and cries of the distressed horses encompassed by rampant death and murder. Another well-known ghost horse and non-headless rider duo is Herne the Hunter in England's Windsor Park. Apparently around the year 1400, a great forest keeper for King Richard II was a rugged man named Herne. He spent most of his time alone in the woods, concealed, looking out for poachers and trespassers with him. With time, due to gradual loss of his youth outdoors or fear of being disgraced by some perverse offense, he hanged himself from an oak tree. Since then, the mighty hunter's charging apparition, high astride a black steed, has terrified hundreds of trespassers. The protective Herne is said to wear a stag's skull on his head, its long, twisting horns, making the whole display beastly and surreal. In 1843, author W. Harrison Ainsworth described the site in his novel called Windsor Castle. Quote, a wild, spectral object, possessing a slight resemblance to a human being, clad in the skin of a deer, and wearing on its head a sort of helmet, formed from the skull of a stag, from which branched a large pair of antlers. It was surrounded by a blue, phosphoric light. End quote. But this chilling apparition was even recorded much earlier, 1599, by none other than William Shakespeare in The Merry Wives of Windsor. Quote, there is an old tale goes that Herne the Hunter, sometimes a keeper here at Windsor Forest, doth all the winter time at still midnight walk round about an oak with great ragged horns, and there he blasts the tree and takes the cattle and makes yield blood and shakes a chain in a most hideous and dreadful manner. You have heard of such a spirit, and well you know the superstitious, idle-headed eld received and did deliver to our age this tale of Herne the Hunter for a truth. Well, I don't read Shakespeare very often on this podcast. I think you can see why. It's easy to imagine horses on land being utilized by humans, whether in this life or the next, but amazingly, not all horse-like shades or phantomals are restricted to the dry earth. This is best exemplified by the Scottish Kelpie. These creatures are often called water. They're basically aquatic spirits that manifest as young, healthy horses grazing about waterways. When someone inevitably tries to climb on its back, the creature bolts for water, splashes like thunderclaps, and intentionally drowns the human. At that point, the horse may transform into a more evil humanoid form, having successfully lured the person to doom. No one knows why Kelpies hate humans, though they have been seen for hundreds of years, even described by author Stuart Grant in 1823's book called Popular Superstitions of the Highlanders of Scotland. Some Scots believe that if a man is strong enough to strap a bridle on a Kelpie, the creature will submit and be a valuable resource the rest of its life. However, if the bridle is ever removed or somehow slips away, the escaping Kelpie will place a horrible curse on the man who restrained it. Though cats, dogs, and horses have been popular phantomals in history, it is, of course, impossible to completely address the whole wide variety of animals documented. Virtually every kind of creature has made a spectral appearance in some culture. When it comes to variety of species, I must at least mention the Kirkgrim. For hundreds of years, especially in Europe and the Americas, it has been customary to kill and bury an animal, or simply bury one alive, at the site of a newly constructed church or graveyard. The spirit of the sacrificed creature is intended to guard the property against vandals and others with disrespectful intentions. In some cases, even humans were murdered for the task, and in that case, the resultant wraith was called an Anku. An important estate may require multiple animals to be sacrificed, and some of the most prominent were lambs, pigs, cows, goats, and chickens. In 1893, author T. Thistleton Dyer wrote about these phantoms in his book called Ghost World, and he specifically commented on lambs in churches, saying, they often resided in the building's tower. If the lamb's vision is seen leaping about the ground,
Bye.